Midnight, the initial detection. For 13 billion years, the universe has been a master of silence. It is a silence not of absence, but of scale. A vast, echoing void where the only sounds are the rhythmic pulses of dying stars and the faint, cold hiss of the Big Bang's fading warmth. We have spent decades pressing our ears to this void, listening through the static of a billion suns, hoping to catch even the faintest whisper that we are not alone. But tonight the silence ends. The setting is unremarkable. Deep in a high desert plateau, far from the light pollution of human ambition, a cluster of radio telescopes tilts toward a patch of sky that has been empty for eons. Inside the control room, there is no fanfare. There are no flashing red lights or dramatic sirens. There is only the low, electronic hum of cooling systems and the smell of stale coffee. A lone technician watches a monitor where a waterfall plot of data cascades downward in a hypnotic flow of blues and greens. It is the visual representation of the sky's natural radiation, the chaotic, messy white noise of a living galaxy. Then it appears. First, it is a stutter, a thin, razor-sharp line of light cutting through the visual static at exactly 1.42 gigahertz, the frequency of hydrogen, the universal language of the cosmos. It is a signal so narrow, so mathematically pure, that no pulsar, no quasar, and no collapsing star could ever have authored it. The technician leans forward. The chair creaks, a small, earthly sound that feels suddenly heavy in the stillness. They check the calibration. They check for satellite interference. They check for the mundane. A microwave oven left open in the break room, a stray terrestrial broadcast bouncing off the atmosphere. But the line remains. It is unwavering. It is not a random burst. It has a structure, cadence, a sequence of pulses that feel less like noise and more like a heartbeat. It is a message that has traveled through the light years, crossing the freezing dark of interstellar space, just to find this specific set of dishes at this specific moment in human history. In this room, the air feels thinner. The world outside the window, the sagebrush, the distant mountains, the sleeping cities, is still the old world. A world defined by human borders, human history, and the comforting assumption that we are the only eyes looking out at the dark. But on this screen, the before is dissolving. The technician's hand hovers over the keyboard, fingers trembling slightly. They are the first human to ever witness a deliberate act from another mind that did not evolve on Earth. For a few brief, terrifying minutes, they are the only person on a planet of 8 billion who knows that the great silence is over. The signal continues its steady, rhythmic pulse. It is patient. It has been traveling longer than the technician has been alive, longer than the observatory has stood, perhaps longer than our civilization has possessed the means to hear it. It is a call across a canyon so wide we can barely conceive of its depth. The technician finally reaches for the phone. The plastic feels cold. With a few keystrokes, the first notification is sent. A digital flare launched into the night. The wow moment 2.0 has arrived. But this time it isn't a fluke. This time it isn't disappearing. The universe has finally spoken. And everything we thought we knew about our place in it has just become obsolete. 2 o'clock, the verification. The signal is no longer a solitary ghost on a single screen. Within minutes, the digital flare has reached the inner circles of the astronomical community. Now, the tension shifts from the awe of discovery to the cold, hard logic of verification. This is the most dangerous hour. History is littered with the corpses of false alarms, pulsars once mistaken for little green men, cosmic rays that turned out to be the interference of a poorly shielded microwave in a break room, or the subtle, deceptive echoes of classified military satellites. The scientists do not celebrate. They do not cheer. Instead, they descend into a state of intellectual combat. They search for any reason to prove the signal is a lie. Phones begin to vibrate on nightstands in New Mexico, in the outback of Australia, and on the frost-bitten plains of the Netherlands. Sleep is discarded. Across the globe, the great steel ears of humanity begin to turn. The very large array in the American Southwest tilts with a collective mechanical groan. The park's observatory in New South Wales slews across the southern sky. The air in these control rooms is thick with a specific kind of adrenaline, the kind that comes from knowing you are standing on the edge of a precipice. The data is shared through encrypted channels, a silent exchange of numbers and frequencies that carry the weight of a species. Do you have it? The question is asked in a dozen languages, but the answer is always the same. A sequence of coordinates, a frequency, and a confirmation. The signal is not drifting with the Earth's rotation. It is fixed. It is coming from a point in space so precise that it can only be anchored to a distant star system. The tension mounts as they perform the off-on test. They point the telescopes away from the source, back into the empty dark. The signal vanishes. They point them back. It returns, rhythmic and insistent. This is the moment the scientific heart skips a beat. The parallax is confirmed. Whatever is sending this message is not a satellite in orbit. It is not a glitch in the software. It is an objective reality originating from the deep interstellar cold. The scientists are now trapped in a terrifying paradox. Their protocols demand caution, peer review, and months of careful study before a public statement is made. But the signal is too bright. It is too loud. It is a massive, energetic thumbprint on the fabric of the radio sky. In the hallways of universities and the secure bunkers of space agencies, the atmosphere is one of frantic, hushed urgency. This is no longer a theoretical exercise in the Fermi paradox. This is a logistical nightmare. Under the post-detection protocol, they are supposed to notify the United Nations. They are supposed to keep the data centralized. But the world is too connected, and the secret is too heavy. Every second that passes, more eyes are turning toward the same patch of sky. The circle of those who know is widening, from 10 people to 100, from 100 to 1,000. The technicians, the data analysts, the graduate students, they all see the same waterfall plot, the same mathematical perfection. They look at each other with a new kind of fear. It is the fear of being the ones to tell the world that the story of humanity is about to become a subplot in a much larger, much older narrative. They are the gatekeepers of a truth that will burn through the structures of religion, politics, and philosophy. Outside, the sun begins to rise over the first few observatories. The world is waking up, unaware that the ceiling of their reality has just been torn off. The verification is complete. The signal is real. Now, the silence is no longer in the stars. The silence is in the room, as the world's most brilliant minds realize they are no longer in control of the information. The leak is inevitable. "6 o'clock, the leak. A secret of this magnitude has a half-life. In the 20th century, the truth might have been contained for days, perhaps weeks, buried under the heavy weight of bureaucratic silos and encrypted cables. But in the 21st century, information is a liquid. It finds the cracks. It flows toward the light. As the sun begins to touch the horizon in some parts of the world, the first ripples of the discovery begin to break the surface of the digital ocean. It starts small. A cryptic post on an obscure astrophysics Discord server. A blurred screenshot of a frequency spike shared on a private message board. A grad student at the Green Bank Observatory, unable to contain the vertigo of what they've seen, sends a 3-word text to a partner. It's actually happening. From these tiny fractures, the leak begins to widen. Within the hour, the wow signal 2.0 inch is no longer a rumor. It is a contagion. On social media, the transition is jarring. The usual stream of political bickering, celebrity gossip, and mundane life updates is suddenly interrupted by a growing, jagged frequency of signal mentions. Amateur radio enthusiasts, the citizen scientists who spend their nights listening to the static, are the first to verify the leak for the masses. They point their own backyard dishes at the coordinates that have been whispered across the web. They don't need the world's billion-dollar arrays to tell them something is there. They can see the anomaly for themselves. They stream their monitors live to thousands of viewers, showing the same rhythmic, impossible pulse. The tension shifts from "what if" to "is this it?" In dark bedrooms across the globe, the blue light of smartphones illuminates the faces of millions. There is a strange, heavy silence in these rooms. This isn't the loud, frantic excitement of a sporting event or a holiday. It is a quiet, suffocating awe. People scroll through feeds with a sense of existential vertigo, watching as the trending topics of the world are wiped clean, replaced by a single, terrifyingly beautiful realization. The mainstream news outlets are in a state of paralysis. Their anchors are at their desks, ears pressed to headsets, receiving frantic updates from producers who are being told no comment by every government agency. The silence from the official channels is louder than the signal itself. This silence creates a vacuum, and in that vacuum, the human imagination begins to run wild. Are they coming here? Is it an invite? Is it a warning? Small human moments flicker across the globe. A father in Tokyo watches his sleeping daughter, wondering what kind of world she will wake up to. A night shift nurse in London pauses in a hospital hallway, staring out the window at a sky that suddenly feels crowded. A group of teenagers in a park in California stop their music, looking up at the stars with a sobriety they've never known. The global view is no longer a metaphor. For the first time in human history, the entire species is looking at the same thing at the same time. We are no longer divided by our borders or our histories. We are unified by our ignorance. By 9 o'clock, the internet is beginning to buckle under the weight of the traffic. Servers lag, videos buffer, but the signal remains steady. It is the only constant in a world that is losing its grip on the old reality. The governments of the world realize they have lost the race to control the narrative. The truth has outpaced the protocols. They can no longer manage the discovery. They can only react to it. As the clocks tick toward noon, the digital wildfire has consumed every corner of the planet. The world is no longer waiting to see if it's true. It is waiting for someone, anyone, to stand in front of a microphone and say the words out loud. The silence of the morning is about to be broken by the official voice of a species that has finally found its neighbors. "12 o'clock, the official announcement. There is a specific kind of silence that precedes a storm, but it is nothing compared to the silence that falls over the earth at midday. The digital wildfire of the morning has done its work. The rumors are no longer rumors. They are a collective, global breath being held. In New York, the canyon-like streets of Manhattan are eerily still, the usual cacophony of taxis and commerce replaced by the low hum of thousands of car radios. In Tokyo, the giant neon screens that usually scream advertisements have gone dark, or have been replaced by a single, static crest, the seal of the United Nations. History has many hinges, dates like 1945 or 1969, but this moment is different. Those were human events. This is a planetary one. The setting is the General Assembly Hall. The air inside is heavy, not with the usual political friction, but with a somber, almost religious gravity. The world's leaders do not look like powerful figures today. They look like witnesses. When the figure finally steps to the podium, they do not lead with a smile. They lead with the truth. The words are clinical, chosen with agonizing care by a committee of scientists, linguists, and diplomats over the last 6 frantic hours. At 3:14 Greenwich Mean Time, multiple observatories confirmed the reception of a non-natural, narrowband signal of extraterrestrial origin. The words are spoken, and the before officially ends. Across the globe, the reaction is not a shout, but a visible physical shift. In living rooms, people lean into one another. In public squares, strangers grip each other's hands, bound together by a sudden, jarring sense of kinship. The divisions of the morning, the borders, the currencies, the old grudges, suddenly seem like the squabbles of children in a very small, very fragile nursery. The announcement confirms what the scientists already knew. The signal is a level 10 on the Rio scale, a discovery of maximum significance. It is not a glitch. It is not a fluke. It is a deliberate technological signature from a civilization that has, in a single moment, demoted humanity from the masters of the universe to the newest members of a crowded cosmos. We are told that the signal is originating from the direction of the Kepler 186 system, nearly 500 light-years away. The distance is a mercy. It provides a buffer of time and space. There is no immediate threat of invasion, no looming shadow over our cities. But the psychological impact is immediate and total. The anthropocentric era, the long, lonely period where we believed ourselves to be the center of all meaning, has collapsed. The speaker at the podium continues, talking about international cooperation, about the post-detection task group, and about the formal petition to the International Telecommunication Union to protect the frequency of the signal. But for most of the world, the details are secondary to the feeling. It is the feeling of a world that has just become much larger and much more mysterious than it was when the sun rose. We are no longer the only eyes looking out at the dark. We are no longer a monologue. We are part of a conversation, even if we haven't yet learned how to speak. As the broadcast ends, the silence returns, but it is a different kind of silence. It is the silence of a species that has just realized it is not alone in the house. The world doesn't go back to work. The shops stay closed. The traffic doesn't move. Humanity sits in the quiet of its own living rooms, staring at the stars through windows that suddenly feel like they're looking out onto a very busy street. "1800 hours, the deep analysis. As the first evening shadows stretch across the continents, the shock of the announcement begins to give way to a more profound, more unsettling question. What are they saying? In the basements of national security agencies and the glass-walled labs of supercomputing centers, the signal is no longer being listened to, it is being dissected. The data is vast. It is not a simple pulse or a repeating sequence of prime numbers. It is a torrent, a high-fidelity, multi-layered architecture of information that defies every traditional method of human cryptanalysis. Linguists search for grammar, for the familiar scaffolding of nouns and verbs, but they find none. Mathematicians search for the elegant simplicity of binary code, but the signal is more fluid, more organic. It exists in a state of superpositional logic, a language that seems to describe multiple things simultaneously, a syntax of pure relationship. It is here that the existential vertigo truly sets in. We are beginning to realize that the signal was not designed for us. It was not simplified for a primitive neighbor. It is a transmission of such staggering complexity that it feels less like a message and more like a physical object, a monolith of pure information. To look at it is to feel like an ant crawling across the surface of a microchip. We can sense the power, we can feel the heat of the processing, but we lack the cognitive architecture to understand the why. The analysis reveals that the signal is recursive. Within the main transmission are smaller, nested packets of data, clocks that count in units we don't recognize, maps of gravity wells that don't match our charts, and what appear to be biological blueprints that follow a chemistry we can barely simulate. It is a cosmic encyclopedia, or perhaps a ledger, or a broadcast of a culture's entire digital history. It is a great library of the stars, and we have just found the key to the front door, only to realize we haven't yet learned how to read. The tension in these labs is no longer about the fear of the other, but the fear of our own inadequacy. We are staring at the product of a mind that has potentially millions of years of evolution beyond our own. We are seeing the limits of human logic in real time. But within the complexity, there are moments of haunting beauty. One team of researchers translates a segment of the signal into sound, and for a few minutes, They listen to a haunting, shimmering harmony that sounds like the wind moving through a forest made of glass. It is not a song, but it feels like a song. It carries a weight of intent, an emotional resonance that crosses the light years. For the first time, we are forced to confront a terrifying possibility: that the universe is not just full of life, but full of meaning. A meaning that we may never truly grasp. We are no longer the protagonists of the story. We are the observers of a conversation that has been going on since before our ancestors even walked upright. And as the sun continues to set, the scientists realize that they aren't just analyzing a signal. They are analyzing the end of our intellectual isolation. The signal is a mirror, and in its reflection, we are seeing just how small our world really is. 2400 hours, the new reality. 24 hours ago, we were a species defined by our divisions. We were a world of 8 billion individuals, each preoccupied with the friction of our own borders, the volatility of our economies, and the small, loud dramas of our daily lives. We were the masters of a lonely island, convinced that the ocean around us was empty. Now, as the Earth completes its first full rotation since the confirmation, the sun sets on the final remnants of our isolation. The first night of the new reality is not one of panic. The predicted riots did not materialize. The expected chaos was swallowed by a much more profound, much quieter humility. Instead, there is a global stillness. In the great cities, the lights are dimmed, not by order, but by a collective, unspoken desire to see the dark. Millions of people have moved outside. They stand on balconies in Mumbai, on the roofs of apartment blocks in Sao Paulo, and on the quiet piers of coastal towns in Norway. They are doing something they haven't done in generations. They are looking up. The stars have not changed. The constellations remain the same ancient patterns our ancestors named in the dirt. But the way we see them has been permanently altered. They are no longer just cold, distant fusion engines scattered across the void. They are destinations. They are homes. They are the eyes of a neighbor looking back across the fence. The tension of the day has matured into a heavy, meditative peace. It is the peace of a child who has finally realized they are part of a family. We are currently a civilization in its infancy, suddenly made aware of the giants who share the house. The signal continues to wash over us, a constant, rhythmic heartbeat in the radio sky. It doesn't matter that we cannot yet translate the data, or that we may not be able to reply for centuries. The message has already achieved its primary purpose. It has broken the fever of our self-importance. In the small, human moments of this first night, the world feels fragile, yet strangely resilient. A mother holds her child a little tighter, realizing that the world they will grow up in is vastly more complex than the one she was born into. A scientist, exhausted and hollow-eyed, steps out of the lab and feels the cool night air, realizing that their life's work was only the preface to a much longer story. We are entering the interstellar epoch. The problems that felt insurmountable yesterday, the political squabbles, the resource wars, the petty grievances of a single planet, seem different tonight. They haven't disappeared, but they have been contextualized by the scale of what we have found. We are a single pale blue dot, unified by the simple fact that we are all, for the first time, listening to the same song. The great silence is over. The monologue of human history has ended, and the dialogue of the cosmos has begun. As the sun begins to rise on the second day, it illuminates a world that looks exactly the same, yet is fundamentally reborn. We do not know what the signal says. We do not know who sent it or why. But we know with a certainty that will never leave us that we are not alone. The dark is no longer empty. The universe is alive, and we are finally at long last home.